Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode number 10. Finally, I've completed 10 episodes of the Anup Zombie podcast, and I'm like really excited. Today, if you guys had seen the promos, we are going to be talking about what's wrong with the job market. What is going on with the job market? Are people actually getting jobs first of all, and jobs if they to their liking, to their skill level, or what is happening. So this program is for you if you feel like have you're not getting the thing that you deserve. You're not getting something that you deserve. Maybe HRs are overlooking certain aspects of your resume. Like, so we have one HR who we have trapped here today to ask all these questions on 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 some of your skills are being overlooked, and things like that. So anyway, let's head over to Jon Niranjan Paul, who is the principal consultant at Consonant One. That's an interesting name, John, for your company, and happy to see you here on the Anup Zombie podcast for episode number 10. So, so let's start with like introducing yourself, John. Like, how where you based out of, and how did you get into this field of
No, hi.
HR?
Thanks for having me here. I think this is the first podcast I've ever been invited to or even been a part of. So
Okay,
yeah, I think it's the first for every time, no? So super nervous, but yeah, super happy also to be here.
definitely.
So a little bit about
No
me.
better place to launch your stuff, than the than the Anup Zombie podcast.
Yeah, that's the thing. So I've got a little bit over 15 years of experience in HR. I've also got a prior experience working with my ex-employers through their mergers and acquisitions and kind of seeing the entire gamut. And that's when a couple of years back took a gamble saying, hey, why not start off myself and see where it goes. There wasn't too much of thought put behind it, but the name was something that I was very particular about. So the name consonant one basically means singularity and one objective or one direction that the function goes to. And everybody does not like HR by nature, but they'll have to be polite to HR, right? So there has to be some place where we can meet eye to eye. So that's basically where the name was derived from. And yeah, so today, what is wrong with the job market? Yeah, so that's kind of like a very interesting problem to talk about. Um, Anup, have you heard of any? I mean, have your friends or anybody from your circle explained about the job market to you before?
Well, most of my friends are jobless, so I mean, in the sense that I don't think anybody ever, at least in my generation, I don't think
Yeah,
anybody ever got the job. Not anybody, but most of them didn't get the job that they set out to do. Yeah,
yeah,
you know
yeah,
what I mean? Like, they started off like in school, because a lot of these friends I know right from school days, right? So you kind of look at them, and they all have had very different and big ambitions. Those days, everything to like smaller ambitions about starting small entrepreneurships to like really large ambitions.
yeah,
But
yeah.
they all ended up in the IT industry. Most of them.
I mean,
Like,
if you go
I know
back
guys
15
who
years,
have
20
done
years,
I know guys
yeah,
who have done biology, and they are in the IT industry. So don't ask me how, but they just get there. So
yeah, no
it's
difference here.
it's
If you
yeah,
asked me 15 years back, John, what are you going to be? I would probably want to be a basketball star, say national team, India team or something. I didn't know HR would happen, it just happened. Along the way, somehow we
right,
got caught into that field.
exactly.
Yeah, but it's worked out pretty well, can't complain. So yeah, in today's case, I wouldn't say there's anything wrong with the job market. It's just that the game has changed. The game has changed. We're lagging and trying to pick things up, and that's just the way how the economy also works, right? There's a period of destabilization, and then it goes into a plateau, and then gets destabilized again, and we're just caught in that small cycle of destabilized economy that we're working with right now.
Right.
So. interestingly, I have put up a presentation because that's what HR
Before
folks
we
do.
get into
Yeah.
that, but I just want to know, like, there are a lot of theories floating around that that there are a lot of unemployed youth in the job market,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
There are like plenty. Is that a myth, or like how are the other industries like performing? Like, I mean, in the sense that is your only option to go into something like the IT because it is already
Mm-hmm.
having like a good process, or like where is this unemployment thing coming from? Like, I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I am seeing it to a certain extent, but I don't know like how much of it is fact or how much
Yeah,
of it
yeah.
is, just propaganda. Like, how does that work
Yeah,
right now?
so unemployment, what we are seeing right now, if you look at the census data, it's been
Right,
growing. I mean, unemployment has been reducing year on year, and I think according to census data right now, we're around 5 or 8%, which is damn decent compared to other Western economies or anything. What we're seeing
right,
online is a bloated picture of the IT industry because it's only IT folks who are online. You don't see people from an agricultural background or say even a
right,
manufacturing background spend that much time online. So it's kind
right,
of like a closed perpetual loop that we are witnessing, for which we are kind of
right.
generating the content for the entire thing.
Right.
So it keeps
So it
we
is
keep
kind
seeing
of a
much more frequently.
distorted
Yeah,
perception
yeah,
that is there. All right, all right. Let's see. I'm excited to see the presentation. Let's see what you got.
yeah. That's
Actually,
what
this is the
HR.
first time we have had a presentation in the Anup Zombie show. Let me
So
let
that's
me
what HR.
clarify that.
Yeah, that's what human resources folks do the best, right? Good presentations.
Oh really? Oh really?
Yeah.
That's a fact.
All right, I'm just going to share my
All right, let's
screen.
check it out. Right.
The screen's popping up, right?
Yeah, yeah. I can see
All
the
right.
screen. Yep.
So this is my company, Consulting. We are a people consulting firm. We work with corporations, small to mid-sized enterprises and enterprise companies to help them with their recruitment, work. We also work with smaller organizations in the midst of an acquisition, help them sort out their HR function so they come into compliance. And that's what we've been doing for the last couple of years. So I've got a small agenda marked out here. But yeah, when you look at the problem statement, there's only three things that people usually, at least what I've heard from job seekers that we've placed before. The first one is I get ghosted after being contacted by a recruiter. The second one is I hear back from recruiters, but only with rejection messages. And the third one is they never hear back for any of the job applications that they've sent. So these are the three things that I've heard of. Is there anything that you've heard of from your side, Anu? Anything that's not there?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, this is typically what it is, and before all of this itself, there is that thing
Mm-hmm.
about, hey, how do I even get started?
Yeah, yeah.
Like if you don't get placed in your campus, right,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
you're now going to be at a disadvantage because you just don't
Correct.
know what is happening before all these questions even happen. I think a lot of people don't even know how to make a resume.
Mm,
you know
yep,
like
yep.
like just a one page stuff about that, that itself is such a big inertia, and I think yeah, that's one thing I've seen from a lot of people. And once they
Mm,
make the resume, they don't know where to put it, or there is this thing. It's always that thinking that, oh, there are going to be millions of people competing, so I probably have already lost. I don't have a shot in this, or something like that. Something's stopping people from, like, if you get to the point where you're getting rejections, no, I would say
mm.
you are in the top 70 percentile of people who are actively looking for
Yeah,
something,
yeah,
is what I feel. Right.
yeah. So for freshers, see, the basic thing that I would do if I was a fresher today, I will not go and apply for a multinational corporation because obviously there's going to be higher traffic of job applicants there. For me to even stand outright and cut through the crowd, one, I've got to be super lucky, or my application is going to be right on top, so I get a lot of eyes on my application. Or three, I must be related to one of the business leaders that I might get crucified for these opinions, but this is what happens in
do
real in
do
reality.
do alumni help at all in this case? I think if you have some help, I think alumni or something like that, you might
Yeah.
get through somewhere, right? That's
Yeah,
kind of
alumni is help, but it also
where it
depends
is.
on what type of an alumni network. Like if you look at the
Yeah.
general Anna University alumni, I don't think that's a very strong network there. But when you look at the IIM crowd or XLRI crowd, Like those are very strong knit alumni networks, and those referrals usually carry a lot of weight. The way they're even introduced into an organization. So for freshers, what
Right.
I would do today, I mean, if I was a fresher today, I would not apply to any of the larger organizations. I would go to a startup. I mean, even when you look at the current economy, I don't think larger organizations guarantee, a job for the next 7 years or 8 years. There's tons of layoffs happening, and there's tons of economic unrest happening for which everybody gets equally affected. Any organization, be it a startup or be it a Fortune 500 organization. That's what I feel at this
But
particular stage.
typically, an MNC type organization could have like 3,000 vacancies, right?
Yeah, yeah.
For a fresher, they might
Mhm,
definitely, right? That's
mhm.
a doable number for most people to have. Even then, you would advise people against trying to get those positions, or how would,
It kind
or
of
maybe
depends on what the person wants. For me today, I still think building those commercial skill sets that I will, run the rest of my career through. That's most important for me. It's okay that I
right,
join a startup, do the dirty work, get my elbows and knees dirty. That's still fine at this stage. But if I don't, inculcate those commercial skills that will then pave the way for the next 10 or 15 years, it's never going to happen. And I don't think
oh,
the
so
MNCs have that type of visibility between departments or visibility between roles. Because honestly, for a startup, they need more hands and feet. They don't need brains. They don't need strategy. And even if you look at the way all of these Fortune 500 organizations are set up, everything boils down to operations. Everything boils down to execution, and that's where smaller organizations fail. You know, they come with
right,
brilliant strategy, but if the execution doesn't carry the same weight, then the idea is already failed there. So I'd rather
right, right,
learn those commercial skills at an initial stage, understand how the business works with the economy, how the economy interacts with the business, and get to a point where I can then market my skills, get into a higher paying job, or get into a larger organization at a certain grade, or at a certain role where it keeps me creatively engaged. That's what I would do. But yeah, it again. This is only my opinion.
right.
It's not a blanket statement. But
Yeah, yeah,
with
yeah.
today's
I
thing,
understand that there is a value in a startup, and then
yeah,
if you get into a process at a very early age,
exactly.
you could really miss out on a lot of learning because you will be typecast into that process,
Yeah, yeah,
and sort of you kind of just do one piece of the puzzle. I think the same thing happened with Twitter, right? When Musk
exactly.
came in, he just fired all the process guys and kept
Yeah,
all
yeah,
the core thinkers and those guys who could actually, kind of run companies on their own, sort of a thing, right? And everybody
exactly.
else was out. So yeah, I think that's great advice. Like, look for a company where you can get your elbows out, like, and
Yeah,
get your hands
it's
dirty,
more
right?
like I mean, startups are more like a music band. Everybody has their
Right.
own instrument and everybody has to be good. There's no concept of being the
Right.
front man or the drummer or the bass guitarist. If the bass
Yeah, yeah.
guitarist messes
You're
up,
the you're the roadie, the groupie, the
exactly.
everything. You are
Exactly.
everything for the band. Yeah,
Yeah.
that is true.
And the
Yeah.
same,
So
holds true even if you're an ACDC or even if you're a local band in Bangalore. If somebody messes
right.
up, the band's performance goes down.
Yeah.
It's just the
Yeah.
same equation, irrespective of the stage. So that's why
Yeah.
I would rather go to a startup where I can be a band member rather than be somebody in the audience. That's about it.
Yeah, and you'll be closer to the founder also, right? And
Yeah,
you're
yeah,
closer to the best ideas and the
exactly.
best leadership at that time, as opposed to a larger company where the information or the orders get handed down across multiple
Yeah,
levels to you, and
correct, correct. Yeah,
yeah, and you can't
it doesn't
really
cascade.
gain that. It doesn't
Yeah, the
cascade.
founder's thought
Yeah,
doesn't cascade through a larger organization, and that's just the way larger organizations are built as well. Even if you look at, say, Freshworks, when they started, they were super agile, super fast, and the ideas really percolated and collected a lot of market buy-ins because they were addressing a problem as a smaller elite unit. But today,
right.
they've gone IPO, they've gone, they're listed in Nasdaq. So that's an entirely different ballgame altogether. They have to worry more about how their share performs in the market, what people think of the company, and slowly these objectives change over time.
Yeah,
Every
no, we
company
used
goes
to
through
hear
that.
a lot more about Freshworks when they were a startup, when they were like bootstrapped and running, right?
Yeah.
These days, I mean, I don't hear as much as passionate, those kind of passionate calls from people about Freshworks as much anymore. It does make sense,
Mhm.
but I don't know how the economics of something is going to work when you are stuck, right? Like, at the end
Exactly.
of the day, that like the growth is inevitable.
Yep.
So yeah, so why do people get ghosted? Like if there is a lot of demand, right? So let's say, do startups,
Mhm.
first of all, are there enough startups to cater to the demand around India?
Yes, the I would definitely say there are a lot of startups out there, and the best thing anybody can do is, this is like the industry hack. Just get a
Right,
MCA login, Ministry of Corporate Affairs login. It's going to cost you about $100, and you immediately see a list of companies in your locality. You can filter it out by pin code and everything, and you have access to all the startups. See what they classified under, what type of business they're doing, and that's
so
about it.
what is this again? Ministry of
Corporate affairs, the
Corporate
MCA login.
MCA login. Okay. The MCA
Yeah,
login where
yeah,
every
yeah,
private limited has to sort of sign up
exactly,
with, right?
exactly.
Yeah, right.
And
So
I will also, kind of suggest going with a private limited organization than an LLP or a sole proprietorship, just because the compliance is higher. People who register a private limited organization are usually doing for the long run, so that they can cater to a Fortune 500 or a Fortune 100 business. So the
right.
ideologies also will change. The way they run the business
Right.
also will change.
Right. So yeah, I agree, because the a private limited also is looking for investment. So growth is a huge
Exactly.
priority for them
It's
as
factored
well,
in right from day
uh,
one.
right from day one.
Yeah. So I
Yes.
mean,
So
if I were back as a fresher with all this market knowledge, I look at hacking into that, local homegrown startup economy, and start getting my.
okay, so MCA is like neatly organized. There's like everything, all the information on
It's not
companies
that
that you
neat.
need, or
Yeah, it's not that neat.
okay,
It's still like a government portal. You'll have to
right.
take it with a pinch of salt at the end of the day.
Right. So you can use it as a reference to figure out. Okay, so you can even go to your pin code and figure out, is it, which are
Yeah,
the
yeah,
companies in your
yeah.
area?
You
Oh,
can.
then that is a great hack, man. So yeah, there you go. The first hack by the HR itself. Let's go. MCA portal is going to go down after this. You're going to be. So all right. So okay, now I
Yeah,
have identified a certain set of companies. Right now,
yeah.
what is the journey of a job
No,
seeker after this?
I'll
Like,
actually answer your first question. You were talking about the
right?
getting ghosted part. So,
Right. Yeah.
getting ghosted, it kind of happens both ways. Even with candidates, once they've got an offer, the HRs, people like me, will get their laptops, everything ready, and maybe a Monday that they'll usually be joining, and suddenly, the person doesn't turn up. So it
Right.
happens both ways. And I would, the primary thing that I'm very worried about today's attitude towards work, or attitude towards the general working of an organization, is that there's tons of apathy going on. HRs, it's also on both sides. Candidates aren't as passionate about the work they do, not which is
Really?
being reflected by
Okay.
the organization. And I've even cribbed to so many people and try to understand how we crack that problem of apathy, trickling into different layers. And it's something, that it's like the hidden hand that ruins everything. Even if the
Right.
SOP, the process is there, even if the guidelines are there, the tone of voice or the way you handle a person, be it an HR or a candidate, whomever, if they don't harbor that goodwill internally, everything is going to show up in the way that we talk, and there's no
Right.
masking it at the end of the day. So the first thing that I would say is, even before understanding the concept of being contacted by a recruiter, is this ghosted bit, this apathy has to disappear. It has to disappear in a way where,
But how? I mean, like, okay, so is this like a new problem? Because I also remember a time when, even in the old days, like people didn't give a shit about a job, like
yeah,
right.
it's not a new
So
problem.
now I think because the numbers are more, maybe the
Yeah,
number of
yeah.
people who don't have that apathy. So, but in general, there are people who do want to achieve things, right? I mean,
Mhm.
like how okay. but because of the bigger number of people who lack that
Exactly.
empathy, it is creating an issue.
Yeah, we
So,
see that much more
yeah,
often these days than what we did earlier. I mean, when I started, there wasn't too much of the internet going around. Most of recruitment usually happened like we know who the competitor is, so we'll probably go park our motorcycle in front of the competitor's office, land in a tea shop where the boys usually come and have tea or something, and we start
right,
talking to them there. But I mean, back then there was no concept of targets, or there was no concept of you have to make so many calls, or you have to make so many applications sent in. Uh, it just mattered if we found the person in time or not. People are working more towards outcomes, more towards results than looking at the smaller numbers and giving it too much of importance. Which, I mean, it is important to track and measure the effort, but if it's not leading
right.
to a certain outcome, and if they're spending too much of administrative time measuring those numbers, then it's a completely lost cause there.
So, but why would a HR, why would a recruiter
Mm.
ghost an applicant? Why would that be? Right.
Yeah, so you remember I told you about the apathy problem. So there's
Yeah.
tons of miscommunication happening between teams, even from the business level team leaders right down to HR. Because I'll actually
I
show
mean,
you
this is
one.
to do with applicants, right? Like, why
No,
would,
I'll
let's say,
actually,
I applied,
yeah, I'll actually show you one thing where
right?
it exactly tells you why. But yeah, before we head out there, this is the only thing that we'll have to make sense of. So the game right now is you got the market here, you got the employer here, you got the job seeker here, and you got a bunch of variables on top. Only if all four of these characters align will anybody end up in a job. So we're already
Right.
working in a system where there's a lot of instability and a lot of factors that we're working against. So this is what we have to be very cognizant about. For HR to ghost candidates, it usually doesn't come out as primary intent. So this
Right.
is something where you see this is like a proper candidate journey through the entire hiring process. It all
Right.
starts right from here, talent acquisition. And okay, so one more interesting stat, talent acquisition is a very recent discipline in HR. It's not something that was there for a longer time. HR started with industrial relations, more or less managing the unionized labor, contract labor on that
Right.
aspect when it was all manufacturing during the industrialization age. And talent
So,
acquisition was
talent
actually,
acquisition, who gives you the requirements for a talent acquisition?
yeah. So
Do the
it's
companies just,
usually
yeah,
it's usually a business requirement. Say, let's say for example, you're running a tech company where you don't have an internal capacity, I mean internal team handling Java development or something, but you've got a lot of people in .NET. So if you have to acquire a new skill set to cater to a certain customer, then that's where the mandate comes from. It comes from the business, from the business leader saying, hey, we need a Java team to handle the new project that's coming in. What is the time that we'll have to invest in getting these people? What is the cost? What are the mechanics? And what are the failure ratios as well? They'll do that mapping and then
right,
send it out to TA. So that's the way it's done today. But back in say 1960s or 70s, TA was actually part of the team managers or the supervisors role itself. Because
right,
supervisors basically looking for a person, one more additional person in their production line to either replace somebody or increase capacity in that way. And it's only
right,
in the recent 20, 30 years that it's been cut off from the supervisor's list of responsibilities and moved into a separate department. And as a result, what happens is you have talent acquisition, which is completely disconnected from the business, by default. When you look at the larger scale of things, most of these Fortune 500 organizations have global capability centers or captive centers operating out of India. And as part of those captive
right.
centers, you've also got a very elaborate talent acquisition setup where they hire for people in, say, Thailand or Japan or any place in Europe, and they're all sitting here in India. So, do you understand the
Mm,
level of disconnect that's happening there? They're just, looking at the
right.
job description and going to market with it.
So let's talk about talent acquisition a little more now.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so let's say the employer or the recruiter puts out a job, right, through you or whatever job portal it is. So,
Mm-hmm.
like, how many resumes might, okay, so let's say it's a job that a lot of people can do. A ton of resumes could come in and things like that. How does a HR actually go about figuring out which are the ones, like, won't there be mistakes? Like, I mean, like,
Yeah, yeah,
you know what I mean? Like, how does
yeah.
that happen? You could go through thousands of resumes and have a short time to select a candidate. Like, what would be the best way that HRs actually go through, that kind of stuff?
So yeah, I mean that's something that we face on a daily basis, and that's one of the reasons why we don't post jobs at all. We don't spray and pray in the market. What happens in that aspect is like if you take any LinkedIn job that you're interested in that you're even evaluating, you'd see a small notification saying 100 applicants, 1,000 applicants, 10,000 applicants. LinkedIn gives you that stat. So does a
Right.
Naukri and so does an Indeed, as far as what I've seen. So the moment you already see a job that's got 1,000 applicants, why would I even go and apply? There's no way a person is going to be able to evaluate 1,000 applications. And the best
Right.
part about today is we've been so conditioned to use social media. Instant gratification has seeped into our expectations everywhere. And people just randomly hit apply, apply, apply with for like 10 different jobs. They don't even have a gander at what the job description is about. Don't understand what the company is about. You just see the title, let's say a designer, pop, 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 apply everywhere. It might be an industrial designer, the role that you're
Right.
applying for, but the person might be a UI UX designer. You get it? That's not a
Right.
transferable skill set.
Right.
So
And
it's
LinkedIn
a
itself, like, you put a post saying that
mm,
you want to fill up a position. LinkedIn itself is sufficient to get you even in the comment section, right?
mm,
Depending on the type of job, of course,
yeah, yeah.
it can get you some things. So, like, does AI and automation and all, is it going to play a huge role in this, or do how much of human intervention actually plays a part in all of this?
So AI
Right.
and automation can get the job done easier as long as we leverage it the way it's supposed to. Like even take so I'm going to go back to the example of LinkedIn jobs and Naukri jobs.
Right.
Both platforms give us an option of not just posting a job description, but also have a list of qualifying questions there. And the idea is, even if people do hit the easy apply button, the application is not gonna land in my inbox unless they qualify for those questions that we asked them. And we can have those
Right.
preset answers built in. So if there's going to be 1,000 applicants and there's only
Oh.
10 qualified applicants, it makes my job super easy. I'm just going to look at 10 people. I want to spend the due diligence and time
Oh, so
talking to
it
them.
okay. So AI is basically not looking at your resume information. It's looking at how
No,
you answer these questions, right? How
yeah,
you
yeah.
and what you know in there. But what if I use
So
AI
AI
to answer
hasn't,
those questions?
yeah, AI hasn't really changed that particular, way of how resumes get shortlisted. What AI has done is it just does the research for us a little bit easier. Before AI or before automation that came in, we used to map the industry and find out who's where and which company is doing what type of departments they've got internally, and are there any transferable skill sets? That's the question that we want to answer at the end of the day. Will a person at
Right.
organization A fit in organization B? And trust me, not any organization is remotely similar to each other in the way they operate. All right.
Right.
It might look like when you look at the big four firms, right? EY, KPMG, PwC, and Deloitte. They might look, like the same entity with different colored shirts when we look at it from the
Right.
way from our perspective. But when you go internally into the organization, the way they operate is completely different, and you only know who's going to fit that particular role as long as you know how the company operates internally. And that's a key thing where you know talent acquisition today does not have access to, because they are probably geographically isolated from the actual team that this person is going to be working for, or they might not have communication access to the hiring team, or hiring team's availability might be an issue. So at the end of the day, you've got this person here, the
Right.
L1 hiring team person, who's the one who's actually impacted by not having a resource there, not having a person in that role. All right.
Right.
And then you've got the hiring team at level two, who's probably not in the same geographic location, or definitely not in the same grade or same capacity as this person here. But
Oh,
this person has
okay.
got other requirements saying, hey, we need a person who fits our culture, who's got that level of communication, which might not be a skill set that is commonly available for the role that they're hiring for. Like take for example,
Oh.
When you look at the agri export economy, the agri export industry, India plays a key role for most of these larger organizations like International Flavors and Fragrances, because this is where they source all the produce from.
Right.
So a person doing, say, backward integration for farmers in Italy or in Europe will have flawless communication, flawless sales skills, flawless presentation skills even. But when you look at people working here, we are geographically, we are geographically isolated in a way where most of the community originated from a farmer background. So the
Right.
way that the farming community operates in India is completely different. We're not going to go with hybrid seeds unless the government gives us a subsidy, or if it's cheaper for
Right. Right.
getting
It's a
growing it up. So the
right.
skill
Right.
set completely changes, even though we're looking for the same person across two different geographies, and that's where the
Right.
disconnect happens. A person sitting here might have a different
Right.
understanding of the role altogether than the actual
Right.
person running that team. And if these two
Oh,
aren't on the
so
same,
because of this mismatch, you could find people's resumes getting,
yeah,
rejected for some
yeah,
reason,
and it's
right?
not just about resumes. Resume is
Right.
just one part of the, it's just one cog in the entire machine.
Right.
The problem starts when this team and this team don't see eye to eye, but they still come up with the job description, hand it over to the talent acquisition team who's already dissociated from the business, and then talent acquisition starts running the clocks basically. What
Right.
that basically means is, what's the turnaround time for a TA person or a recruiter to hire that particular person and put them in the role? Is it going to be 30 days? Is it going to be 60 days, 90 days, and so forth? And what happens is, the person sitting here, the recruiter here, their performance
Right.
review is highly graded by the TATs that they work with. So the
Okay.
recruiter is only going to look at hiring fast. That's going to be the primary metric that they're going to work with. So if that's the
Right.
case, and there's no consensus between here and here, how do you think the right hire will happen?
So how do you balance this out in your everyday job when you probably will get a candidate that you feel it works very well with whatever
Mhm.
role is there in the company, right?
Mhm.
And then what happens when this mismatch happens? How do you deal with things like this?
So
Do
I'm not
you
going to answer that because that's my trade secret. That's the only way I keep food on the table.
oh, so there is a skill in that, is it? There is some kind of funda or a hack in doing that,
Not exactly a
huh?
hack, not exactly a
Okay.
hack, more like
Experience
a
also.
small mechanism that I've built over the last 15 years of my own experience.
Are
So,
you
but yeah,
kidding?
that's what puts the food on my
Oh.
table. So I'm not outing that out yet.
Next episode. Episode.
Probably on a one-on-one paid basis, I
Okay.
might
So
slowly hint
so let
at
me
it.
let me then let me then rephrase that question. Like how do people, approach you in order to sort of get the
Mhm.
role that they want? What would you suggest that they show recruiters like yourself, like, what you
Mhm.
suggest they present either in the resume or in these meetings? What should they be presenting, and
When you say
what
they,
is
are
it
you
that
talking about job seekers or employers?
job seekers, I'm talking about
Job
job
seekers.
seekers, how
Okay.
should
Okay.
they, yeah, what are they doing wrong when they try to do stuff like this?
All right. I'm just going to jump to another slide. I think I've got something prepared. Yeah. So in today's context, these are the two primary things that we use for applying to jobs. The CV, you can use it on Indeed, Naukri, anywhere. LinkedIn is more like a social platform to start networking with. And the difference between both these platforms is, when you look at LinkedIn, LinkedIn is where I go to find what your personality is. All right. And
Right.
the CV is a technical document. Think of it like in software, you have the project notes and everything, right? Where you have every change that's been done, mapped out, who's been responsible for that change, or even take your bug fixes, for instance. Everything is tracked in that way. And that's what a CV basically does. A CV tells what the technical aspects of that particular person is. But it's not going to tell me who Anup is. Or the CV is not going to tell who John is. I know that Anup is my kick-ass guitarist, so it's not going to tell me that here, right?
No, I'm not. See again. Just because you have a guitar doesn't mean you're a kick-ass guitarist.
Yeah, but still, you're better than a person who doesn't have a guitar. So that's
Yeah,
still.
I think my daughter has become much better than me. I'm like really scared to play the guitar now. Yeah.
So
So yeah, I mean, like
resume.
I get it, but one thing is bugging me. Like
Mhm.
they do look at LinkedIn for checking your personality. Is that how
Yes,
recruiters
yes,
are
I
these
do.
days? Oh,
I do that
oh,
definitely,
really?
and I'll tell you why.
So if you have very strong opinions and all on your LinkedIn, that's it. Huh? You'll be like bye bye. Or
That's a
how does
clear.
that
You
work?
can have strong opinions on Facebook and Instagram because those are the platforms for running
Ah,
opinions, and that's where they mine all the customer analytics. I'm sorry, consumer analytics and consumer behavior. But LinkedIn is basically your own sales landing page. That's the way I look at it. Even if you look at my
oh,
LinkedIn, it's
okay.
tailored to clearly communicate to anybody who's looking at it or anybody that I sent a request to saying, hey, I'm sending a request to you, and the only reason I'm doing that is because I might have a job for you. All right. So
Oh,
and
so
this
don't
gives
curse
me,
your ex-employer on LinkedIn by any means,
yeah,
is what you're
don't.
saying.
I mean,
Don't.
yeah, don't. Please don't. You never burn bridges. And I can give you
Okay.
a classic example. All right. There was one
Okay.
person that I placed in a very large organization back in 2017, I guess. Yeah,
Okay.
2017. And that person has moved on to one of our existing customers, who is a Fortune 500 organization. The only reason we even signed up with the Fortune 500 organization is because I treated that person in 2017 really well, helped them through the process, and helped them at several levels. Even coached them up for interviews, used me as a sounding board if you want to practice, and that today has resulted in a very large scale operations that we are running here. So it makes all the difference. You never burn your bridges because you don't know where it's gonna end up at. A candidate
Right.
yesterday is a client today, and that's just the way how the economy works. So
Right.
yeah, please don't.
Right.
Yeah, please
Yeah,
don't.
okay, okay, okay. So your LinkedIn has to be like on point, like because I
Yeah,
all the recruiters are going to be looking at that in that way.
I wouldn't say
Is
all,
that
but the good ones, yes. The good ones, yes, because what we're
right?
trying to understand is, see, we spoke about culture, right? And I also told you
Right.
that every organization is a unique organism by itself. And so
Right.
if I know that a certain organization works in a certain way, I also know that they have an affinity towards hiring a certain type of person, irrespective of what skill set they come with. And it's usually
Right.
when the personality and the skill set matches the requirement, that's when you have a consensus. All right, and
Right.
LinkedIn is probably where I would go to just to understand if this person carries themselves in a very mature way.
And you
I
also look at
understand.
their network of people, whether they
Yeah,
have
yeah,
recommendations on LinkedIn and stuff like that
exactly.
as
I
well.
wouldn't I wouldn't give too
Oh,
much weight to
okay.
recommendations. What
Okay.
I would do is if let's say you and I have a mutual friend, I'm just going to call them up and say, hey, Machan, do you know this person? And I'm going to
Oh,
get into
really?
a
You would
podcast
do
with them.
that? Like,
Yeah, yeah.
oh, okay, okay.
So I want to
So,
know
so,
what I'm buying into your podcast now before I jump in.
oh, okay. Well, good thing you wouldn't have found any information on the podcast. Okay, I
Yeah,
understand. Okay, so this hiring process is not just based on that piece of paper you sent and all of that. So if you don't receive a call back, you've got to look at all these things, right? You've got to look at how you're presenting yourself online,
yeah,
especially
yeah,
on LinkedIn,
yeah.
and you got to build your network on your own a little bit, I suppose. You're right. You
Exactly.
should try to connect with people, and you should interact more often. So does it matter if you post your opinions but you don't have any likes and shares on it? Does that say anything about an individual,
Not
or does the
really.
content really matter at the end
Not
of the day?
really. See, I wouldn't go that far as to say look at LinkedIn from a branding perspective. I wouldn't go that far.
Okay.
If you are an organization, then LinkedIn branding is supposed to be one of your core corporate communication objectives. For an individual, what I think would matter the most is, let's say, I mean, if I'm looking at somebody's profile and I see the post that they've been consistently, dissing their own previous employers or dissing the way the industry works and not doing anything about it, I will probably steer clear. I will not reach out to them at all.
Right.
And because
Right.
Anup, when you look at the grander scale of things, when you look at the way legends in the industry, built their own organization. You talk about Henry Ford, you talk about say an Elon Musk even, or even a Mark Zuckerberg. These guys had 90 reasons to give up and only 10 to hold on to, and it's pretty tough holding on to those 10. But what happens in the long run is if you hold on to those 10 reasons, say for a year, those 10 reasons become 20 reasons for you to hold on to in the next year, and 30, and so
Right.
forth. So that's
Right.
the way high achievers even rank up really fast, and that's one of the key things I'm going to look for when I present a person to my customer. I don't want to go and replace that role again in the next 3 months. In fact, I want that person in that role to grow so aggressively, grow so fast that they come back to me and say, John, I've got a solid promotion. I'm let's say a senior business manager here. I've got my own charter. I need a team assembled under me as soon as possible, and I think you are the only person who can do that for me. So
Right.
that's the way I look at every single person that I am placing or my team is placing for our customers, and that's the way that we even like to work with our own candidates as well. Even and there have been instances where I have worked with people who consistently diss their own employers or previous employers, and the basic thing that I did was I called them out for coffee, told them, boss, you can't do this anymore. These are the implications. It might seem I mean, stress releasing or something at that time, but it's going to have long-term implications that it's going to affect you for the next 10 or 15 years until that piece of content gets buried so deep that nobody is going to be able to find it, and maybe even LinkedIn clears up their servers. You know,
Right.
you don't even have to put that
Right.
energy out there. If something is not working, and if I'm not in a position where I can do anything about it, I'm just going to move on to the next
Right.
problem that I can solve. And that's
So
the same ideology.
you put down no chat GPT, please. So you have a system
Yeah.
to identify if somebody has been
No,
using chat GPT. No,
no,
but
there's no
then
system. I mean, there are systems to
okay.
identify, but those are paid tools. I don't do that. I can
Right.
just read the resume and find out if it's ChatGPT or not.
Oh, really? There are
Yeah.
ways to figure that out like
Yeah,
immediately, is it?
the way ChatGPT phrases sentence and all, no, it's pretty obvious
Right.
that it's not a person behind that. I mean,
Okay.
I wouldn't say. So what I'm trying to say here is just don't copy and paste. ChatGPT
Right.
is super useful in giving structure, giving ideas, doing the research for you. But yeah, just don't
Right.
copy and paste. Put in that effort to tailor it down, trim it down to what's only needed for that job or for that organization, and not just copy
Right.
paste. And there's one more thing about the CV, Anup, that I want to talk about. Of late, I'm hearing about a lot of these resume writing services, all right,
Right.
that charge anywhere between 10 to 30 grand per CV, depending on what level the person comes to them for. And I think that's like the most unhealthiest thing that you can do for your own resume, because if somebody
Right.
writes it for you and you pay a solid 30 grand for your CV, you're not going to change it at all for the next 2 or 3 years.
Right.
Yeah,
Okay.
you're going to go with
Okay.
the
But
same CV
these
to.
writing services, there is none of note. Huh? Like nobody can actually help you get in a good resume, or like how is that like?
So that's the thing.
Is
See,
that
when
yeah?
when you're looking at an organization, you're mapping out several things. I think I got one more slide about that. I'll just show you. Yeah. So this one is an elaborate thing. So when you're mapping out an organization, this organization is working in an ecosystem of customers, suppliers, distributors, and competitors, which are the immediate, neighbors dictating how the organization works or how they even perform in the market. And on top of that, you've got technology disruptions, political disruptions, economic forces, and acts of God, uh, things which are way away from the organization's control. So when
Right.
you understand I mean, when you look at the organization as a job seeker, you're not seeing any of these. All right. The first thing that I
Right.
would do is I would kind of map the entire industry that this particular organization is working in, understand how they even keep the lights on, or how they make money. I'm just going to follow the revenue, follow the money, and then see where they're making the most impact at, and then understand what the customers play in that particular revenue cycle part. So when you look at
Right.
services-based organization, it is a time and material business. All right. And for time and material businesses to work really well, they need to have solid processes and SOPs in place. All right. And if that is the type of organization that I'm applying to, and let's say, for example, I'm a designer, I worked in product design companies, I am not going to show my product design experience. I'm going to showcase my services based experience at the start. I will downplay my
Right.
other experiences which don't align to this particular organization in the first place. But when a resume
Right.
writer writes your CV, they're going to say, oh, John is a product designer. John will be applying to companies like Google and Facebook and the typical FANG companies for which you already have 300,000 plus applicants for one role. My
Right.
CV is not going to cut through that at all.
I mean, yeah, I suppose that is the case because I mean, so, okay, so if a job seeker has to change his resume for everything and every type,
Hmm.
like, isn't that exhausting? Like, how do you? Okay, so you probably will not get a job with the first 10 companies. Example, right? That you send
Hmm.
your resume to, no matter how you tailor make
Yeah.
it. So, like, is there another solution, or this is the way you have to put in that much effort into your resume to? There is no other way out of that, right? You have to
So
do it.
you do have to put that effort in. That's where the intent comes from. So I'm also going to show you this particular bit, which will tell you where that intent changes. So when we spoke about those four characters here now. So the
Right.
market is the foundation, is the base for all of the other characters to build on. It's a non-negotiable.
One regulation in the market, and you could lose your job.
Exactly,
That's
exactly.
it.
Exactly. So that's just about it. So when you look at the way the market fluctuates, 2008 was horrible. I got laid off in 2008 and I couldn't
I
find a
mean,
job
the
for a year.
number of people who lost their companies in 2008, man, like, is uncountable. Like, I think,
Yeah,
like, that entire generation, I think, died in 2008, is what I
yeah,
feel. I
yeah.
think that was the change from being a legacy type of company into, like, something else. I remember these product companies who used to have these note lock
Mm-hmm.
licenses, who would sell,
Correct.
to these computers. Suddenly they had to get into an influx of, these online companies from outside India who could just give you licenses,
Yeah,
just
yeah,
like that for anything, and also provide you knowledge. You no longer needed a salesman to come to your office
exactly.
to sell. And so what were the other reasons for this particular dip in 2008? Like, what happened there?
Primarily Lehman Brothers, if I'm not wrong, that's what's most advertised. So
Right.
they messed up the housing market stateside, and that's what
Right.
eventually cascaded. And since when you look at the Indian economy or most of APAC's economy, we are either in a time and material business with organizations in the Western continent, or we're probably a complete outsourcing unit. So either way, so it's a domino effect at the end of the day. And that's what happened. So I was working for this company called Maersk, and we all lost our jobs at that time. I mean, not all of us,
Right.
but
So
yeah, some.
Maersk is the shipping company, right?
Yeah,
That's
yeah, yeah,
the
yeah.
shipping. Right. Right. Right.
Correct, correct.
So why
And
did they die? Because of less economy, like no
they
goods being
haven't
transferred. What
died. I wouldn't say they died. They just took a call
at that time,
saying,
at 2008, is what happened
yeah,
there,
so we didn't have
right?
consignment, we didn't have cargo to ship. So if the ship has no cargo, then there's no money the ship is making, and if there's no money the ship is making, that's the only way the company earns revenue, right? And if you
Right.
look at Maersk today, they've completely divested. They've gone into on-ground logistics. They've got so many. You won't believe
Right.
the amount of software products they've built for the logistics industry, and that's
Right. So
they've
they've
barely,
had to change big time,
yeah,
huh? They
yeah.
have to just to survive, like, literally.
Not just survive, but today they're the number one guys in the entire world, dealing with logistics software and all. And that includes
Right.
freight charges and everything. So you can calculate freight charges on a live basis. Imagine the amount of benefits, say a DHL or a FedEx would get out of it. They've really
So
wiped the
Maersk
slate
actually must
clean.
have been there in almost every port city in India, right? It would have
Yeah,
been there in, like, Chennai. It would have been
yeah,
this side
yeah.
in Goa. That everywhere, right? So a lot
Correct.
of lot of people did lose their positions at that time, I suppose, in
Yeah,
2008.
but
Right.
they pivoted in such a way that today, 15, 20 years later, they're market leaders again. They haven't,
Right.
completely been wiped off the face of the earth. So that's something that's really interesting because you look at an organization at that size to bring about that much of change within 20 years. I think that's
Right.
brilliant. That's brilliant the way the management has handled the change there. It doesn't happen every day. You can probably count in one
Right.
hand how many organizations have done that.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
Maersk is, I believe, a 100-year-old organization already.
Right. Right.
So, but yeah, so what I wanted to say from this particular chart is when you look at the market dips, right? When the market dips, automatically companies, organizations spend lesser. They want to increase their runway and just ride out this rut that they're in. All right. So when the spending becomes lesser, it automatically reflects into not hiring extra people but managing with the existing workforce. And no manager or no HR or no business leader wants to lay off people unless they're already in soup, and that soup only happens when the operational runway is super low. So when you
Right.
look at companies in these stages, in the troughs, they're not going to be very optimistic about hiring. The hiring, guidelines are going to be super stringent, super narrow, all right. And they're only going to
Right.
look for people with say a 98 percentile or a 99 percentile match to the job that they've got on hand. But when you look at
Right.
companies on this very on the higher side of these troughs, these are economies where the spending sentiment is much higher, and automatically it gives a lot of creative freedom for the same organizations to play around and see, hey, why don't we hire somebody from a different, from a cross-functional discipline, which will add those particular skill sets that we don't have here.
Right.
All right, and I've seen this specifically even in the recruitment side, right? I've had a lot of people that I worked alongside who were developers by default. They've got a
Right.
solid 4 or 5 year strong career in development and switched to recruitment. And these guys excelled in validating candidates for tech roles.
Right.
So those are transferable skill sets that were, encouraged when the market was here. But the moment the market slips down to a trough, people are going to start becoming pessimistic, and the imagine two lines. All right, it's going to become super narrow in what companies are
Well,
going
so
to look
what do
for.
you suggest job seekers do in these times, right? Like in
Mm.
2008, what did they do? I mean, like, how did they tide over? Like a lot of them probably dipped into their savings or whatever it is. Like, what? How should you now focus on getting a job at this time? Like, what would you compromise on,
All
and
right.
how would you survive in these? Because right now, I think you're looking at an upswing to a certain extent, right?
Yeah, yeah.
But there could be another drop at some point. Like,
Yeah,
what are
it
we
highly
looking at?
depends what our friends stateside do. We're not away from the
Yeah,
median line yet. We're still
right.
heading there in the current trajectory. Yeah, it highly depends on what our
Oh,
friends
you're
in
saying it could go this way and then
I'm just
drop.
a layman here, but yeah, it could go either ways. We never know.
Right, 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 right.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
So in
I
these,
agree. Like, what do people do? How do they react? Like, in
mm,
situations like this?
so in these instances, say 2008, I don't think 2008 we had too much of Naukri or Indeed or LinkedIn and all. It was
Right,
pretty nascent time. What I did was I reached out to all of my friends. I reached out to everybody. I even offered to pay a couple of agents money to get me a job. Huh? So
right, right.
So I did do all of that, but nothing turned out. And then ultimately, it was a friend who lived in the same street that I did say, "Hey, why don't you come work in my company? We are a startup, but just give it a shot. At least you might have some sort of
Right,
paycheck that you can take home." And that's where it started. So you look
right,
at the smaller or the local economy, right? If at all you're
right,
out of a job in one of these stuffs, the best bet is going to be working within your local economy and trying to find that particular referral or that particular person who's willing to stick their neck out
right.
for you.
So
And
they
that
use
person,
these times as an opportunity to do your own thing, right? Because you
yeah,
don't have that kind of a choice, and so this should be the opportunity where you actually back yourself to do something, right? Yeah, that's
not
good advice.
necessarily.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
mean, I
yeah,
wouldn't suggest everybody to start up.
yeah.
This is
That's also
something
there.
that, yeah, no, I wouldn't suggest because, in all honesty, when I started up, I was the least prepared person ever. I just,
Yeah, true.
I
Yeah,
just, kind of like
happens for
stumbled
most
in.
people. That first company is like one of the most, the most experimental phases of your life in terms of
Yeah,
anything,
yeah.
really. Yeah.
Yeah, because I
Mm,
was the least bit prepared. It hit me like a wall,
right,
and nothing in life prepared me to witness that particular. The first year was terrible. The first year was sleepless. I was spending at least 16 to 18 hours in front of the system, and I probably did that in my first job. Huh? I didn't do that in my most recent job. I was spending
right,
16 to 18 hours on the system and trying to figure things out, trying to build a business model that I can repeatedly sell to my customers and still keep them happy, still keep them coming back for more. Because in the line
right,
of work that I'm in, quality speaks, through ages because we're working with people, and if we don't consider the business, the nature of the business that we're in, it's going to mess up the
right,
entire reputation that we've got for the. I mean, that I will probably have for the rest of my life as a professional. So nothing
Right.
prepared me for it. I did take a lot of time. I did try and figure things out. And during the first year, I was just happy that there was some sort of paychecks coming in, keeping the lights on, keeping food on the table, and I just didn't complain. I just put my head down and try to make sense of it. But yeah, this is not something that I would suggest for every single person on earth. I would probably say if you're insane enough, if you're or if you're gullible enough like me, fall into it and then figure your way out.
Right.
But yeah, during
Right.
these tough phases, I think the best bet would be to get a referral into an organization. All right. And so so when you talk about that referral, the person referring you is only going to refer you in when they know that you're going to uphold their reputation. If they go back on LinkedIn
Right.
and then they find out that you dissed so many employers, you put so many opinionated comments on that, they're not going to stick your neck out for you.
Right.
So it feeds
So
into
let's
that
talk
again.
about, for example, like these days, what are these newer job avenues that are available? So I've heard like remote work is something that,
Mm-hmm.
that is kind of a new thing where you can do a lot of remote work for
Yeah.
people globally, right? Like, what would you suggest for Indian job seekers who want to work with like people outside India or companies outside India? Are there any avenues for them to do that? Like, uh,
There definitely are, but that would really depend on what level or what stage of career the person is in. Like if I was starting off as a designer, I can just sit at home and do my work. If I'm starting off as a developer, I could sit at home, refer a lot of documentation online, and just do my work because my output at that level is singular. I'm only expected to design or write code. All right.
ah,
Let's say I
right.
become a team manager of sorts, and I'm responsible for operations of 20 or 30 people. Then the expected output changes. I have to
Oh,
maintain the standard of code that these people are writing, and I also have to ensure that the team is,
oh.
filled with enough work, and the complexity starts there. So
So
I
remote
would,
work is basically for people who are means to an end rather than somebody who's having these kind of responsibilities like company-wide responsibilities or team-wide responsibilities.
no, I wouldn't
Uh,
call it black and white in that way. Anup. So you see, there are
right,
organizations, even organizations that we work with, are
right.
multinational and completely remote. All right,
Oh, okay.
it completely depends on the way the higher management builds these SOPs, and that's where founder culture seeps in. If the founders
Right.
actively involved in running these operations and ensuring that the organization still delivers the way it's supposed to be, then
Yeah,
that's an
I
entirely
guess guys like WordPress and all are still doing that, right? Like
yeah,
everybody's
yeah,
remote, I think. They don't
correct,
even have an office. If I'm WordPress doesn't have an office anywhere. I think they
yeah.
mentioned at some point saying that okay, if we have one office in one place, it would mean that we are treating people differently. So,
Same thing as
okay,
Spotify.
so
Spotify also doesn't have doesn't have a corporate office that everybody works out of.
right,
Everybody is working remote. But when you look at the founders of WordPress and Spotify, they've had a lot of hand in the way the company operates, right? But when you look
right,
at the same thing in a way where, let's say, a publicly traded company, a Fortune 500 organization, you don't have the direction coming from one particular source. So
right,
it's a bit
right.
of a gray area if you ask me. And there's one thing that I usually, with remote working, I did like working in at home, and there are often times where when my team isn't present near me, I sit in my shorts and my t-shirt and put some music on and do the work. That's when I do most of
I
my work.
know.
It's super
There is a
comfortable.
certain level of freedom. There's a certain level of
Yeah,
freedom that
yeah.
comes with that. That you can't. Yeah, I get that. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and it's not just about the freedom. That's when I have all my thoughts gathered in one place. The amount of heavy
Right,
lifting I do in those 1 or 2 hours where nobody's around, that's like insane. I will not get that same output when I sit in an office. Because when I'm at
right.
office, there's like 10 other people trying to reach me. It might be a client, might be a teammate of mine asking a couple of doubts or questions. It might be a candidate saying, hey man, what's my application? Where's my application at? So there are so many
Right.
disruptions coming in and out. All right, and a lot of these disruptions are in person. A lot of these disruptions are over the phone or even over a Teams meeting of that sort. But when you have that
Right.
focus time of say 1 or 2 hours, it really does a lot of difference. But what I've also been witnessing is, let's say I onboard a new customer, right? I make it a point to go to their office, visit them, sit, have a small session. It can be a formal or an informal session depending on how much time that I've got to play with, and so that really sets the tone for the rest of the engagement. You know,
Right.
FaceTime really matters, and especially for employees, I think FaceTime is crucial because it gives you the right optics to your leadership. And if the
Right.
leadership does not know that you're in the system or if you're a teammate, they don't want to see anybody as an employee. They want teammates at the end of the day. They need people who can watch out for them and they watch out for those people as well. If you don't have enough face time with those people, then growth also gets started, gets stunted at the end of the day. You get
Right.
stuck in that transactional role that you're in where the output is only singular. You don't see the growth post a certain point, and that's
Right.
just the
Right.
way I kind of see things.
So once you place somebody into a job, have these job applicants at some point come back and said this is not the right job for me or something like that, and do those kind of mismatches happen? Like, what about these
Yeah,
mismatches in skills and things like, or even the employer could come back and say, hey, I hired the wrong
mm,
person.
yeah, yeah.
Like how does that go now? Like
So it
what would
does
happen in
happen.
these cases?
So there's one part of services that we don't advertise on our website. It's called special projects. Special projects
Okay.
basically mean working towards reduction in force, which is what we know as layoffs. So when you look at the grander scheme of things, layoffs are supposed to be structured in a way where you have data backing, not in the way
Oh,
where I think we recently saw Infosys Mysore hire a couple of bouncers and all, if what media
yeah.
says is right. Yeah, so that's not the right way to go about it. It's completely backed by a lot of data, and the communication that everybody gets is also specialized, personalized in a way where it's delivered in the right way, in a humane way. Because
Like what
the
happened? What happened with the Mysore incident? Like
yeah, I'm
why
not
did
sure.
they suddenly?
I'm just looking
Okay.
at Instagram, but what I think would have happened was they would have probably their operational runway would have become shorter because of most of the freshers that they hire, they keep them on bench. So even if you're part of Infosys, you don't actually get into a project within 8 or 9 months. So that's the
So
current
when it
stat.
comes to brass tacks, they lost some projects. Is it? Is that how it is, or
Not
or they
projects. See,
overhired?
yeah, they overhired, estimating a certain level of work to come in. But if that work gets delayed even by a month or two from the customer's end, then automatically the operational runway goes down drastically. Because you're in the financial planning sense for an organization, every financial, every financial department will have something called a treasury department. The treasury department basically, understands the cash flow, the liquid cash, the long-term investments, and the project billables that are coming in. And they chart out saying, okay, with this much of money, we can operate the company for the next 6 months or next 8 months, assuming that the next payment is going to come in the next pay cycle, say be it a net
Right.
30 or a net 60 pay cycle. But if that net
Right.
30 or net 60 pay cycle even gets delayed by say a week or two, that drastically shuts down brings down the operational runway, for which you're looking at you
Right.
either cut off a certain portion of the workforce or you completely wind the company down. It goes that bad.
Right.
Yeah. So there are
Right.
multiple
Right.
things. That's why I showed you that silo here, right? Variables.
Right. Right.
So this guy is like one X-Man
So
only. You don't know what they're gonna do.
so you were talking about like the face to face stuff. Like so
Mm-hmm.
like in your process, like for companies, when does it go from just the piece of paper or the resume to face? Like, at what point does this happen?
Mm. So the resume only carries you post the TA team and the L1 team, because like we
Right,
spoke about, the resume is a technical document. A resume says what skills John has, what achievements John has done for every organization he's worked at, and
right,
there might also be a revenue component that I can showcase in my resume, saying because I did this, we earned so many dollars or whatever. It's more a scientific document or something that we all of us have done through school times. We wrote those observation analysis for chemistry lab experiments, more of that way. So it'll take me from here and here, because these
right,
two departments or these two people are the ones who are very particular about the functional match. So you
right,
remember I told you that a person can be split in terms of personality and functional skills. So functional skills is what the CV depicts, and it will carry here. All right. So the only purpose a CV has for anybody today is to get a call back, and the call back only happens here. All right.
Right. Oh,
So the
right,
CV that
right,
you're
right.
writing has to be digestible enough for a person sitting in this seat, a talent acquisition professional or a recruiter, so that they understand that the keywords that are there in the resume or the jargon that's there in the resume matches the job description that they've been given. And if you remember, we also spoke about TA being extremely disconnected from the business. So they don't have, a direct view, or they don't sit in the same floor as what the production teams do. So he's
Right.
just working off of a job description. And they also work with aggressive turnaround times, which means they have to
Right.
hire the person within a week or two, for which they will not be even going through thousands of applications. So
Right.
what I would do if I was applying for a certain role, I would look at that company's tonality on their website. I would go through their case studies to understand how this company even makes money and why would they even need me there. Am I on
Right.
the revenue side or am I on the cost side? And probably work in a way where I highlight my achievements that brings the highest resonance to that organization, because that's what we're looking
Right.
for. And I think that's where the ATS's applicant tracking systems of the future will go to. It will start benchmarking resonance or relevance to that particular job description. If you notice, I think Google has already started doing that for their SEO. They don't
Okay.
pay that much weightage to the keywords anymore. They pay a lot of
Okay.
weightage to domain authority and how this particular website ranks. I mean, not ranks, but has relevance to the search term that is being searched for. So that, I think that's where a CV really has to cut across. CV has to mirror or be very close to the verbiage or the tonality of the employer that you're applying to, while portraying the skill set that matter the most to that particular organization. All right. So I'll give you a classic example. So here at Consonant One, we have HR folks on the revenue side, and I'll even before going there, I'll explain. So if
Right.
you draw the entire organization on a balance sheet, you've got a
Right.
revenue column and a cost column. All
Right.
right. So at Consonant One, HR folks fall on the revenue side because HR folks here directly are responsible for generating revenue for our company. But when
Right.
you shift the perspective to a corporate organization who's not exactly an agency like us, HR folks fall on the cost side where they're indirectly tapped to revenue. They're not directly in the stream of revenue.
So your skills could technically be used in the cost center or a revenue center,
Exactly.
right? It could be
Exactly.
used in both sides. Yeah. Right.
Yeah. So if I'm going to apply to a corporate tomorrow, I most probably might downplay my revenue generation skills as an HR. I might overplay the systems that I've built, the stability I brought into operations, the way I've handled payroll for multiple geographies in that manner, because that's what
Right.
matters to a corporate organization. But if I'm going to apply to a larger agency tomorrow, I'm going to completely overplay, or I'm going to completely showcase my revenue generation skills, because that's what matters to an agency at the end of the day.
Right. Right.
Yeah?
Right.
Does,
Right.
does
Right.
that make
Right.
sense?
Right. Yeah, I mean, like in the sense that let's say you're a designer who's designing
Hmm.
banners, simple thing, right? And
Yeah,
you have two options to do this. If you're going to an agency, the best thing is to say that here are my award-winning banners that reached a
correct.
million people, right? Rather than just say, hey, I can design in Adobe. You know what I mean? Like if you
Exactly.
say I can design Adobe, I can do this, it may not strike the recruiter that hey, your designs are actually powerful and they can generate results.
Yeah,
That's what
yeah,
you mean, right? Like kind of
yeah, yeah.
something like that. Hmm. Right, right,
So
right, right.
that's
So
what you
let's
have to
yeah,
work on the CE bit for. And
right.
I think, oh, we're already past time. Huh? We'll just skip down. We'll just skip
No, no, no,
down
no. We are
to.
good. Don't worry about it.
All right. So these are
People
the
are
job
people are
boards.
still people are still listening on all three. So
So that's a decent start.
Thanks, viewers, for being on X and YouTube and LinkedIn. Yeah, there you go. We are
Oh
streaming on
wow.
LinkedIn as well this time. So, yeah, there are
I
people
might get a
listening. So
couple of
let's just.
messages tomorrow. But yeah, let's see.
I'm not responsible for loss of clients, by the way. Like.
Right. So the final character here is the job boards and the marketer. And each of these,
Right.
so this is Indeed, this is Dice.com, this is Naukri, and this is LinkedIn. Each of these job boards
Okay.
also have their own way. or work towards how they help employers find people. And as a job
Right.
seeker, you might have to do some research on how Indeed works, how Dice works, how Naukri works, and how LinkedIn works, so that you put your
Right.
applications in the right way.
Like
And this is
how
where
do
I
they
go back.
work? How are they different now? What is Indeed like?
Oh yeah, there's tons of
Quickly,
YouTube.
like what do
Yeah, there's tons of YouTube
we,
videos on this. I don't think we'll be able to keep time if we start talking about each of these platforms. But
so okay,
that's
so
where,
everybody knows these platforms and they're going to be yeah okay
yeah,
Indeed
yeah, there's tons of videos on YouTube. Even, I mean, there will be exhaustive videos, stuff that even I
like
don't know.
so all this monster jobs and all that they're all dead right now. Nobody
Monster
goes
Jobs
there.
is
What about
found it right now. So yeah, they're still there in the market.
like Shine.com and all that? They're not like those are the
Yeah,
guys
they're
who
still
used to
there. I mean,
advertise
they're
a lot.
also
Okay,
a counterpart, but I don't think they see as much traffic as what these platforms do. And Dice is an international
right.
platform for developers, so it kind of gives you a larger access, a broader reach to overseas employers and whatnot.
Right. Okay, all
Yeah.
right. So
So
let's recap a bit on everything. So let's talk about the job seekers. So first, a job seeker, the first thing is, they you need to have a good resume, right?
yep.
That's your first thing. So what are
Yeah.
the couple of tips on your resume? First, of course, on LinkedIn, I suppose you need to ensure that you are you have a decent personality out there, you're networking well, you're interacting well, and you're engaging with people and showing
Yeah.
off your
Yeah.
personality to a certain extent, I suppose. Technical documents, do you think video, like making videos and stuff like that, do people do that? Like say, hey you, hello, I'm a designer, I can do this, I can do that. Do people ever talk about that, or
So I
uh,
think a video introduction would be an added advantage, but I don't think everybody's cut out to be on video. Like me, for instance, this is the first podcast I'm in, and I'm super conscious all the time. So I don't think it's for everyone. If you're really comfortable with it,
okay, so
please.
it's safe to assume you never get any video resumes,
No, we
right?
did. We did.
You do
I
get?
mean, we did.
Okay.
Yeah, we did work with an employer, an overseas
Okay.
employer, where they were trying to hire people in India, but communication was an aspect because the team in India was
Uh-huh.
directly managed by the overseas stakeholders,
Right.
and which then landed us in tons of rejections after an initial phone screen or say a video interview because they couldn't understand the candidates on the site. So what we just backtracked and tried to work with them in such a way that they know what they're stepping into even before stepping into an interview. So we just
Right.
requested with our candidates saying, hey, this is the problem that we're facing. We're facing a lot of rejections based on communication, and for Indians, English is not a first language, irrespective of
Right.
being coming from an
But
ICC
it's
school.
kind of not something that a person would think of as a resume at the moment. At the moment, it's all
No, you
text
don't have
based.
to. Yeah, you don't have to.
You don't
Unless it
have to.
satisfies a certain
Yeah.
objective, you do not have to even go on video.
Right.
See, even there's another part to this video conundrum that I faced. So there were a couple of people
Right.
with really strong candidates, technically extremely strong, like they're probably top 10% folks. They had a question saying, John, if I it's not going to take me long to shoot a video right now, but isn't the employer willing to spend that time with me and find out who I really am before they sign on? You know,
Right.
it it
Right.
so that sparked another line of thought in saying, okay, so intent has to be both ways. With today's work,
Right.
if I'm looking for a teammate who's gonna work with me for the next 3 to 7 years, intent has to be both ways. It cannot be one way alone. So there's an
So
alter.
let's say I've done my resume. Now, what
Mhm.
would be the best way for me to contact you now? Like, what would I do?
Contact the
Let's
employer,
say
is
I
it?
contact a HR recruitment firm or okay,
Okay.
let's just take an example. I'm just role playing here. Like, what would I
Mm-hmm.
do now? I'm all giddy with excitement. I have my resume in hand. Like, how would I approach you? Like, what is my best method of getting in touch with you?
So, full disclosure, the best way you can get into an organization right now is through your established network. If you have a friend working at Facebook or Amazon or wherever, the best way is to get through that friend, because what happens on the organizational side is they spend tons of money recruiting for people. Anup. Recruitment is not,
Right.
while it might seem like posting a job and then sifting through resumes, just paying LinkedIn, those are just the visible costs. There's tons of invisible costs in terms of the man hours required to go through CVs, set up interviews, set up assessments, and monitor those. The infrastructure costs required. Those are just those are not usually factored into an
Right.
annual operating budget. But when
So
somebody,
if I don't know anybody, what do I do?
yeah, if you don't,
Like,
if that channel is close to you, then you're gonna look at reaching out to HRs or reaching out to department
so if
managers
somebody wants to
directly.
contact you, they would just send a unsolicited post to you on LinkedIn, like a message, or
Yeah, so we get
they would
tons
just
of
drop it.
we get tons of DMs. I
Okay.
usually make it a point to reply to all of them. It might not happen on the same business day. It might spill over,
Okay.
like say 3 or 4 days
So you
extra
do
from when
look
I.
at even unsolicited, like somebody just randomly sends you at some point it will be looked at and taken care of, and a reply will be given. Is what it is.
So it
Okay.
also depends on the way the person operates. So for me,
Ah, right.
I think so I have a very strong rooted belief saying I'm dealing with people, not just a piece of PDF document or a Word document. You know,
Right.
if I see
Right.
something off, if I see something off in the CV, I'm probably gonna reply back to the person and say, hey, I saw that you've done this here. Is there a particular reason that you've done this? We usually don't do it this way. If at all you want to have a quick chat, I'm happy to help. Just get on a phone call and sort that out. And one of those main things that I usually ask people not to do is put their photos on CVs. You know,
Oh,
photo is
really?
not supposed
What?
to be on the CV. Photo is supposed to be on LinkedIn. That's where the personality starts.
Oh, okay, okay. So, okay, so it works against you if you put your
Yeah,
photo.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah. Everybody's got
okay. So
preferences.
that becomes another factor for somebody to judge you, right? So why do you want to sort of put it there? Is what
I
you're
wouldn't say
saying,
judge,
right?
Anup. I would say everybody's got
Yeah.
preferences, sir. I mean, even if
Right.
you look at the unorganized sector, it works the way it is because employers have preferences. There's nothing
Right.
going about it. It's just the way the
Right.
market is built across. So yeah,
Right.
CV,
Right. Right.
CV. Okay, I'll also give a very. I might be outing myself here. So when I was looking for work, I had 40 versions of my resume, which I
Right.
mapped in an elaborate Google Sheets and
Right.
tagged which version of my CV I submitted to which company.
Oh. Okay. Okay.
So
Okay, so
it
you can
has to
keep
get
track
as
of
elaborate as
what
that.
would work and what would not work, right?
Yeah,
Okay, so you
and I
need to
also learned.
look at job seeking as your own little company. I think like your own little startup to try to build these
Yeah,
little things that can help you understand what is going on. So. Do you
exactly.
get like a lot of people who you have tried to place but they are not able to get placed anywhere for some reason? Like, does that happen?
Yeah, it definitely
Right,
happens, Anup. I mean, when
right,
we work on requirements, we probably talk to at least say 100 people and submit about 15 to 20 people from that initial 100 people. And out of those 20
right.
people, there's only one person that's going to be hired. So there's an
Ah,
obvious
okay,
insane dropout. But what we do as part of that fact is we ensure that feedback is given to the people that are invested in the process. And when we do that, we kind of incite the same kind of behavior back to us.
right,
Some candidate that we work with might probably land a very large role in an organization, and they'll remember saying, "Okay,
right,
that's that dude from Consonant One who really, helped me with feedback. Maybe that's the
right,
way things are supposed to be done." You set that experience out by default. It's the same difference when you step into a Mercedes-Benz showroom and a Maruti showroom. The experience is what matters. At the end of the day, you still get the same four wheels with the same internal combustion engine. There's no
right,
changes
right,
there.
right.
Yeah.
So
But the
let's
way
talk
you,
about the next stage, right? So this guy,
Mhm.
okay, he's got a resume and it's caught somebody's attention. Okay, now you
Mhm.
have that resume in your hand. Now, from this point, what do you think these candidates should do so that they or what happens at this point for them to lose their job, not the job, their interview process after this? Like, what should they do to what are the common
Mhm.
mistakes that happen at this side from the job seeker's perspective?
So I wouldn't call it
Once the resume
mistakes.
is
Yeah,
yeah,
I wouldn't
common
call it.
mistakes like do they like in an interview, what are they saying that that these HRs don't like or something like that, or
Again,
Is
it's
it a
not about
phrasing?
HRs not liking or making mistakes. It's just that people sitting in the seat that where I am currently occupied now, we see a lot more interviews, a lot more calls, a lot more placements than a normal person would. It's like it's just the same, when you're so frequently used to a certain way of
Right,
operating, we know what
right,
works in terms of results, in terms of outcomes. So the primary thing that I've helped a lot of my job seekers to deal with is structuring their interviews, because
ah.
there's a couple of people where I'm currently working with. The last time they interviewed was in 2004. I was
Okay,
in
all
school.
right.
I was in school at that time. All right. So
Right,
they haven't interviewed anywhere else at all, and neither are their CVs to today's standards, nor are their LinkedIn's. So
right,
the first thing that we tell them to do is, when you get into a meeting, because also one more thing is, people at this stature don't usually get into interviews through CVs. It's usually mapped out in a very acquisition kind of way, because that's where talent
right.
acquisition is supposed to do. They're supposed to acquire a person that brings in that business knowledge and expertise there. So what I advise all of our candidates to do is, the way they structure the interviews, start with the person introduction, speak about core expertise, experience, any academic background, and a bit about who you are outside of work, something that's not apparent on the resume or on LinkedIn. Right now, you've got one really cool guitar behind you, so that's something you might want to talk about during your own introduction. Say, hey, I got a Schecter. I think that's a Schecter, right?
Yeah, that is a Shakhtar, yes.
So something of that sort. Say, just to
Right,
cut through that tension, because believe me, interviewers are tense when they come to interviews as well. It works both ways.
right, right,
All right.
right.
So just warm
So
up to the
I think
person.
having a little bit of humor at this stage can actually tilt it to your favor, right? Like even at
It's not
least
it's
maybe a
not also
slight
humor, Anup. It's
something
about
interesting. Yeah.
authenticity. Are you
Ah.
your authentic self during the interview? If,
Right, right,
because
right, right, right.
because if I'm not authentic here, you're not going to be authentic back to me. When you look at human
Right, right,
psychology, we're excellent mirrors. We mirror each
right.
other's emotions, and that's the way, even when you start working in a new place, right? The first 6 or 7 months, you take time to really get to know the people. It takes six or
Yeah,
seven
yeah,
months
yeah.
because people might not be their authentic selves all the time. You know?
Yeah, yeah. Don't be that person. If somebody asks, "Do you like it?" and you don't be like, "Ah, I like it too." Like, yeah, okay, I got it. Yeah, so the your personal introduction is probably the most critical part, right? After this, it
Yeah, yeah.
depends. You have lesser and lesser chances to actually prove yourself. I think after this, right? Like this is the time
Correct,
to.
correct.
So you should probably spend if you're like a job seeker, you should spend more time at this level first before
Yeah.
you.
Exactly. So spend
Right.
about 3 minutes max. I think 3 minutes is a really good ballpark to
Yeah.
structure introductions to. And it might not come. It definitely will not come during the interview, because you'll be super tense. Like when I stepped into this podcast, I was super tense. I just chugged 1 gallon of water before before I came here. That's how tense I was. So it definitely pays off to practice before you step into an interview. You can probably look at the
Right.
mirror, or you can switch on the
Right.
selfie camera on your phone and say, hey, I am John, this is what I do. Just practice that way. Just get warmed up before you step into that meeting. So yeah, 3 minutes is a good ballpark. And once
Right.
this section is done, you'll automatically, I mean, people usually automatically understand that they're in a Q&A type of session. And these are questions where the functional attributes are validated. All right. So understand that it is a Q&A session, and understand that the control is going to move over to the interviewers. I've seen a lot of people get defensive during these Q&A sessions, and that's kind of natural. We don't like anybody questioning us, right?
Yeah.
So it's
I
kind of
think this is
natural to
going to
step
be
into.
a very difficult part for people, right? So
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
I mean, like, I think like when there is a question that you don't know, like you can get extremely defensive at this point, just trying
exactly,
to
exactly.
this is where a lot of people will make mistakes, right? This Q and A session
Yeah, yeah,
once they are selected. Like, what would you
exactly.
advise people? Like, how do you advise people to like calm the hell
I mean,
down and
if that question is beyond the capacity of the person sitting on the other end, I would probably just own up to it. I've done that plenty
right,
of times before, even in my own career. And see, at the end of the day, what I get out of these meetings is I understand that I'm never going to sit with a vice president or say a director for more than 5 or 10 minutes in my daily work. But I've got this person segregated, isolated in a video call or a meeting with me for the next 30 minutes. If I don't know something, I'm gonna own up to it. But at the end of the day, what I'm looking for, the outcome is that I network with that person. I might make a friend there, even if the job comes
Right.
in or not. All right.
Right.
So that's just my opinion. It might not say for everybody, but yeah, getting defensive during a Q&A session is a
Yeah.
major red flag.
Right. Yeah. We just stay calm is what what I would
Yeah, yeah.
recommend, I guess, in this case.
It's okay not to know,
Right.
It's okay not to know, and then
Yeah.
probably people can follow that up saying, I don't know this right now, but I'm really curious to find out how it happens. Have you seen
Right.
something like that before? What would you suggest that I do? Shift the weight.
Maybe asking a follow-up question also might be better instead of, you naturally, like asking a follow-up question, meaning you naturally show that you're curious instead of saying you're curious, right? So
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think that also comes with a little bit of practice. Like you've got to be able to be on your feet,
Correct.
stay on your feet
No,
at
but
that time,
that's
right?
the same thing. If you're not authentic, if you're not your authentic self, then
Right,
it's still gonna be. I mean, if I'm the one sitting next, I mean, on the other side, I know that you're faking it. All right,
right,
I know that you're
right,
faking it. It has to
right,
be authentic.
right, right,
So that's the way. And this Q&A session usually lands at 20 minutes or so. And
right,
once that Q&A session is done, you'll probably see. I mean, most interviewers usually have an awkward pause, and that's when you know that the Q&A session is done. And
right,
they open up the conversation for the applicant to to ask them any questions. And you could probably say,
right,
what would you as the CXO or manager want from a person in this role? What is this person expected to do? Probably follow-up
right,
questions in terms of, are there any immediate concerns or goals or objectives that this person in this role is supposed to address? Talk about a 90-day, 120-day, 160-day, 180-day, 360-day goal, so that you exactly know
right.
what the organization wants from this person.
You can also
And
probably ask why you fired the previous guy to
so it might
know
not be a,
to
it
know
might not
what
be a,
you can. I know.
it might
It may
not be a
not be a
firing
replacement
necessarily.
role, but yeah, it could
Yeah,
be a new
yeah.
role as well. Yeah.
Yeah, so the
Right.
idea is,
Okay.
you step in, even if you get the uh, even if you get the role, you step in knowing
Right.
exactly what you're buying into. The intent, again, like I said, has
Right.
to be both ways. That's why you have really high performing players coming in. And
Right.
yes, sending a thank you email after interview, I think is always a good sign. I would always do it.
Okay.
I would definitely go and thank a VP or a director saying, hey, it was wonderful meeting you for those 30 minutes. Thank you so much for spending your time, because availability for for people at these status is really difficult. So I would
Right.
definitely go and sign off.
So you
That
won't look needy if you do this, right? That's kind of
I
what
don't think
no.
so, because I'm still being my
Okay.
authentic self. I am thankful that the person spent that time with me. I might have got a
Right.
lot more things from that interview than what that person did. So it
Right.
might always work out in my favor. But yeah, it has to be something like this, sir. The Q&A session has to be like this game that all of us, I mean, most of us in our generation have played.
Right.
It
Right.
has to be back and forth. Cannot be anything else.
Got it.
So
Got
I
it.
think this is a good way to structure interviews for job seekers.
Right.
And
So once
this
this
is,
interview is done, yeah,
mm,
let's let's look at, okay, what now at what stage will you be negotiating your salary? Like, I mean,
yeah.
in this case. So now what happens? Okay, so everything is fine. Do employers and recruiters actually show their satisfaction like immediately, like saying that, oh, okay,
Mhm.
you're actually good. Does that happen, or everybody just
No, it
says
doesn't.
we
It
will?
doesn't.
Okay,
It doesn't happen instantaneously. See, because
right,
we spoke about today's economy being in a trough.
right,
Employers will be talking to at least 10 or 15 people before they, rationalize on a particular decision. And
right,
let's say, for example, I'm the first person that they interviewed. I still have to wait for the rest to complete before they can come to a decision in the first place. And
right,
that's how any of us would operate in any other aspect of our life. So when you look at the way the interview is structured, you've got one L1 interview here, which is the immediate manager. Immediate manager
right,
approves, goes to the super boss. superboss approves, then you'll probably be given a
Right.
test or an evaluation. This depends on what type of role you're applying to. The test might even happen
Right.
in advance. All right. So the hiring consensus is usually factored by all hiring levels. So this person at the TA chair takes some notes. This person here at the L1 interview level takes some notes. L2 takes some notes, and they've also got a test to benchmark your scores off of. So it has to
Right.
be, a weighted average or an average between all of these scores. And there's also this aspect of a balanced scorecard evaluation. This is a very old school method, but still holds
Right.
true today.
But do you
Um,
guys prepare the parameters for the balance scorecard for the clients, or
no,
do they
no, we
give
don't.
you like they?
No, it's
Okay.
completely between the L1 and L2 levels.
Right.
It doesn't usually trickle down to TA unless, let's say, for example, so we also do a lot of C-level hiring. We work with a lot of
Right.
CEOs to get them placed and work with a lot of organizations to acquire a CEO. That's the only time we are
Right.
even exposed to the balance scorecard parameters, because that particular person brings in not just their own expertise but their own network as well. So that's the only
Right.
time we're exposed. But yeah, majorly not. And so the hiring consensus basically picks the best person out of the lot who matched all these parameters, matched all the factors at the end of the day.
Right.
And that's when the salary negotiation happens. So salary is it's a sensitive topic if you ask me.
Right.
So we also operate with a couple of customers in the Americas as well. So when you look at the way salaries are factored in America, it's really
Yeah,
something
yeah.
that.
John, let's do a role play, all right? So I'm applying
Mhm.
for a job to your company,
Mhm.
by HR. I've passed out all the other stages, and now we are discussing salary.
Mhm.
So, so what would be your first question to me regarding salary, or would you ask me to give you a question regarding salary?
All right. So if I'm
Right.
operating within India,
Right.
I would already know what the salary budgeted for that particular role is. All
Right.
right. And this is
Right.
something. So the salary that's being budgeted is something that's part of the annual operational plan, which is basic
Right.
financial planning of any organization, and it's not wise to deviate from it from an organizational
Oh, so you will
perspective.
tell me that this is the salary, right?
Yeah, so
That's
this
how
is
it
the
goes.
budget that we've got. Is it any
Huh.
close to what you're currently making, or is it relevant to you? Is basically what I'm trying to
No.
understand.
Okay, give me a number. Give me a number. Let's role play this shit.
Let's say so you're a ex CMO. I would probably say, hey Anup,
No, no, you can't afford me, but like
Mhm.
like I'm just saying, like I'm just
Yeah.
kidding. Man. So I'm just saying, just give me a number. Let's just do a random example.
Yeah, so when we are role playing,
Right.
we'll role play for a CMO just to make things
Ah,
interesting.
okay, okay. CMO. All right, CMO of a company. All right, okay.
Right?
Let's do
So
that then.
you're a
So
CMO,
yeah,
and
yeah.
let's say I'm looking for a CMO for a mid-sized startup series C, Series D funding status, and I've been given a budget of say 80 lakhs per year to work with. All right.
Okay.
I already know from a median perspective that 80 lakhs is slightly low for a CMO. It usually
Right.
today with today's rates, it kind of bounces between 1.2 to 1.4 crores a year. But I'm still, when I open the conversation, I'm going to talk to you as a talent acquisition person. I'm going to say, hey Anup,
Right.
I saw your CV or I saw your LinkedIn here. And I'm reaching out to you because I'm looking for a CMO for this company. Before
Right.
we get further into that particular topic about the role, the company, I want to tell you that I've been given a budget of 80 lakhs to work with for this year. Is that any
Right.
relevant to you? Is it close to what you're currently making? And
Okay,
if it's
I
not,
think it is. I think it is much lower than what I'm expecting. I was expecting at least 1.3 crore at least, and
yeah, yeah.
that is because of my ability to push things further in the space that we are right now. And
Mm-hmm.
is there any way that we can work towards that? If not now,
No.
at some time, is that anyway? So how would a company respond to something like this?
All right. So I would probably shut down the conversation right there, but I will not shut it down completely. This is just my personal
Right,
preference. All right. I would
right,
not shut it down completely. What I would say is right now
right,
we have the budget at 80, but that might
right,
change depending on the time we take to fill this role. All right.
right,
If let's say, for example, I'm talking to all the CMOs in Bangalore, and then I come up with a stat saying the median salary for a CMO is 1.3 crores a year, then I'm going to project that stat to my management, to my organization, and ask them, hey, I've gone to market with whatever information I got, but this is what I'm reading from the market. You know,
Right.
what can
So
we
at
do?
this
We still
point, it is all about okay, how steady that company is on the budgeting on that role,
exactly,
and and they know that okay, this is my production capacity. I cannot make more than this, no matter possibly right. No matter how
yeah,
great
yeah,
your marketing skill, I
exactly.
don't have a way. So maybe you should understand what that role is, like whether it can sort of actually whether you asking more is going to take you outside the running of the job, or
Correct,
sort of
correct,
inside is what it
correct.
is.
Because
Right.
you remember I told you about the operational runway. In case if
Right.
they still go ahead with a 1.3 or a 1.4 crore offer to you at this time, they're going to
Right.
chop their own operational runway by a couple of months. And let's
Right.
play devil's advocate here. If a certain
Right.
customer does not remit the payments in that particular contract period, then their operational runway starts getting exhausted instantaneously.
Right. Right. Right.
So it might be something that they're biting off a chunk that's way harder
Yeah, and
to
that is the
earn
time
after.
that I could lose my job if I don't push things like
Exactly,
immediately and get the
exactly,
operating budget right on track, right?
exactly. So
So
that's where the second
okay.
point that I mentioned. You'll have to find a middle ground. And in so
Right.
I'd like to bring the American context of doing salary negotiations for this on this topic. So in America, you've got a healthy mix of permanent jobs and contract jobs. So contract
Right.
jobs are usually costed to an hourly basis. Let's say a
Right.
thermal engineer at an aerospace manufacturing company is been, a role for a thermal engineer in an aerospace manufacturing company is opened up. The company's budgeted
Right.
that role to $40 an hour. Right?
Hmm.
Even if the average rate for a aerospace thermal engineer is say $60 an hour, but the economy is low, I have seen people drop down from a $60 an hour rate to a $40 an hour rate, and I've seen the
Right.
opposite happen as well. I've seen people jump
Right.
from a $25 an hour rate to a $40 an hour rate. There is no question about
Right.
what is your previous CTC. Do we add 30% there or not? All right. It's
Right.
just that the job has been costed to this much. Is it something that you're okay with? This is what we've costed the
Right.
job to. It's not the person being questioned here. It's not the person's previous CTC being questioned here.
Right.
But yeah, it will not
Right.
work for an Indian compensation strategy because that's just not the way our own labor laws or our own wage codes are built towards. But yeah, just giving an
Right.
understanding of what finding that middle ground is in today's economy. I've spoken to a couple of folks at seriously high salaries for the skill set that they bring in, just because they joined the company at a time where it was in a solid boom. So 21 and 22 were weird years for us because people got 200, 300% hikes were not unheard of. Uh,
Right.
when you look at 2019, 30% was what the market standard was. So you're suddenly entering into a space of high paychecks. And
Right.
right now, what's happening is the market is correcting itself. All right, that's where
Oh.
yeah. So
Okay.
people at that high, super high salary, the skill set that they bring is probably half or 70% lower in comparison to people in the same skill set in other organizations. So it's very hard for a person at that high CTC to let that go and say, okay, let me settle for something lower, because it bruises. There's an entire ego question to be answered here. It bruises the ego. I'm not going to go from like even when we were talking about it, right? I'm not. You're not going to go from a 1.4 crore to an 80 lakh just like that.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So
Yeah.
you really have to make sense of what the market is and what your current avenues of getting that 1.4 crores are, and probably take it with a pinch of salt and say, okay, right now it's horrible everywhere. I need a job. I need to put food on the table. What do I do? So that's where
Right.
you'll have to work on the middle ground. And the entire idea is everybody aims for a win-win. Even HR are instructed to drive down the cost because the cost is directly tied to the operational budget of that particular
Right.
organization. And
Right.
companies would love to have as much as runway as possible. Even me, for instance, if I already have 5 people working for me, I need to ensure that there's enough money in the bank to pay these people's salaries for the next 2 years at least. That's the only
Right,
way I
right.
run my
So
operational
rule of
runway.
thumb in this case is try and be in the ballpark of what they are asking, right? That is kind
Yeah,
of
in today's economy,
what.
yes. In today's economy, aim for a win-win, find middle ground. This works. If you're back in
Right.
2021, 2022, then the average hike percentage was, I think it was 83, if I'm not wrong. 83% was the average hike percentage in 2021 and 22. So it works in that market. Today it doesn't, you know. So this is something that we'll all have to really introspect and retrospect about, and basically try to make peace with it at this stage. Because having a job in this economy is much beneficial than not having a job, as far as what.
Yeah, it is strange because once the employers know this, they are going to
Mhm.
drive the cost down, right? They
Yeah,
know
yeah,
that you're not going to get another job that easily, and that puts
correct.
the job seeker in a very precarious position where you can't really control these things in terms of that's a sad deal actually for most people because
Exactly,
then
and it's not just the
you are
employer
slaves
then.
to the grind.
It's not
You're
just the
slaves to the
employer then.
grind.
It's yeah, that's the thing. It's not just the
Right.
employer.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
all of these
It is the
together.
industry as such. Yeah.
So when you look at, I mean, back in 2022, that's when I think Starlink went live in Europe, if I'm not wrong.
Right.
So I mean, Musk suddenly had 40 satellites on top of Europe, and we had an insane solar flare in 2022. That solar
Okay.
flare wiped out all 40 satellites. I don't think this was
Oh,
advertised. Yeah.
okay.
So that's an act of God. That's way beyond what any of us have,
Right.
uh, understood. And probably, I'm pretty sure each satellite costs at least anywhere between, I mean, the cheapest satellite would probably be $10 million, if I'm not wrong.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So
That's kind of as cheap as going, right? Around $10 million.
yeah,
All
so
right.
that's a lowest of a $40 million loss for the company within one day. Imagine the
Uh,
chunk of the operational revenue it would have taken off.
right, right, right. So at this point, you're screwed anyway. Like
Yeah, so
there is no
these
coming
are
back
things
from
way
this.
beyond our control. Even when you look at political disruption, Venezuela has been a country where there's been tons of civil unrest year over year.
Right,
The governments get
right,
overthrown overnight. There's so many coup d'etats happening there. And
right,
that even though you have a solid labor force in Venezuela, very comparable to Indian costs, the governments don't give corporate companies the stability required to set up infrastructure there.
right.
So that entire geography is cut out from the eyes of a Fortune 100 or a Fortune 500
Yeah,
organization looking to set
political
up a business there.
disruption I think is so unnecessary. I think they should just allow every market to go freely so that it can
Yeah,
grow. Economic forces, okay, all right. So somewhere the dollar has gone down or something like that. Anything can happen, right? In terms of those things. And then
exactly.
tech disruption is another new technology coming and killing your technology that you have been
Yeah,
operating
so
on for
today you
many
look at
years, I
AI taking
suppose.
over
Yeah.
the entire industry, and most product companies are, either forced to migrate their product from a standalone SaaS to something that's a AI-enabled agent in that way.
Right.
So there's tons
So
of disruption happening.
you're seeing AI actually taking over human jobs, is it? Is that how you're also seeing it?
No,
And
no, I wouldn't
is
say
that playing
AI will.
out?
No, I don't think AI will take over jobs. It's
Not
like
yet, right? Not yet. You still need these people to operate and do all of that. And what about
you
like
still need
guys like
you
DeepSeek
still
and all?
need analytical skills at the end of the day. And
Right,
analytical skills is not
right,
something that AI will ever be able to do. What AI can do is like when we advanced from the industrial age to the information age today, everybody's got laptops, smartphones. It just helps us work better, stay connected for longer,
right,
be more efficient throughout the day. Imagine running an HR operation back in the 1960s or 50s, where computers were probably one in any organization. There's just probably one
right,
computer occupying an entire floor in an
right,
organization. People aren't going to submit their applications on LinkedIn Easy Apply at that time, right? They're going to walk in with their
right,
application and say, "This is my resume. I'd like to apply for a job." So it's
right,
taken us a lot of, I mean, it's given us a lot of grounds here to today to work with, and that's the same thing with AI. AI will just equip us better, make us more efficient. I don't think it's going to be a challenge to work with. It's just that people who don't adopt that particular technology early on are going to be affected because the times will change, operational mechanisms will change, the way of doing
right,
business will change.
right,
It's wise to ride that wave and not fight against it.
right, right. But okay. So, all right, let's try to summarize. I think, wow, we've been close to 2 hours, man. Wow, two
Yeah.
hours talking about. It's been a lot of fun, man. I had a lot of fun doing this. Yeah, so yeah, I get it. Like at the end of the day, like being smart in almost every single layer is the only way for you to get yourself a job and not pricing yourself out of the market finally. And you
Yeah.
have to go with the flow at this time because you have no choice. It is the economic conditions that is controlling your job at the moment. It is not really your skill to that extent, right? I mean, there are certain industries, I think, where you can go in there and say, yes, I can increase your sales by X amount, so you give me a chance to prove it, and then you can pay me that money as whatever performance bonuses or whatever it is, right? But at the end of the day, if that's not the case.
Yeah, there's also one more thing I
Mm,
would highly disrecommend doing it. Um,
mm.
Always swipe right, swipe left on Tinder. Please don't do that when applying for jobs. Probably spend some time,
Okay.
read through the application, and make the best of it. Just spend
Oh,
some
for a
because that
moment, I
intent is
for
both
for
ways.
a moment I thought you were asking people to go to Tinder and look for jobs by.
Oh yeah, Tinder's got that new feature, no? They got some business
Oh,
Tinder or
really?
something. Yeah, yeah,
Are
yeah.
you kidding me? For jobs, is it?
Not for jobs, for business. And you can reach out to people for business.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Oh,
they're encroaching
that
into
is.
LinkedIn territory.
Okay, okay, okay. Anyway, I think that's a smarter business model. Like, get
Wrong.
found. Because, at the end of the day, at some point, you're going to be looking for a job or, something like that. So what, do you get a lot of freshers targeting you, or are they usually like, you
So
know,
we do. I mean, we don't place freshers. What we've been doing in the past is we keep going to campuses to recruit freshers for ourselves, right? So
right,
in that process, we've met at least 1,000, 2,000 people passing out of college, and I do have most of the days we get shortlisted, come to the office, have a look at the office, and really tell me on a on a first person basis, saying, hey, would you like to work here? This is what you're going to be. This is why you're going to be sitting for the next 8 or 9 hours in a day, and you're probably going to be spending more time with me than your girlfriend or your wife or your
right,
parents at home.
yeah,
So would you want
right,
to be in a place like this? So that's the
right,
way that we evaluate. And for folks who don't make the cut, I do spend some time and make them understand, saying this is how you operate as a fresher in today's economy. But yeah,
right.
it's not. I would love to do it to everyone that I interact with, but I just don't have the hours left in the day to do that, unfortunately. So we're actually
Right.
trying
Okay.
to put up
So,
a small course on our own website.
right,
It's going to be free for all course. There's no paywall, no gateway, nothing. Just to
right,
spread that knowledge from our end and help people who aren't as educated about the job market as we are, try to navigate
right,
the way through it. So they're
right,
probably so I'm slacking off on that quite severely. This was supposed to go out by December. It's already February
okay,
now. Yeah,
right.
so yeah, those video tutorials will
So
be
this
up.
this course is aimed at helping freshers to try to navigate these.
Anybody, not just freshers,
Anybody?
anybody,
Okay, okay.
yeah, anybody
So
in that
any job
particular,
seeker. Okay,
yeah, yeah. So
right,
because you're looking for a job, I mean, looking for the job is one instance in your professional career. So it's part of that journey there. So anybody stuck in that phase of the journey can probably refer that
right,
material. No paywalls, no email collection, no nonsense. I'm going to post everything on YouTube and put the links here,
right.
and that's just about it.
Understood, understood. Perfect, perfect, perfect. All right, so I think that brings us to the end of
Yes.
episode number 10 and of the Anup Zombie podcast. Thank you, John. I mean, like,
Oh, thank
I
you so
first
much for
thought
having me
initially,
here. I
I
mean, you're the
initially
first
thought,
person who
okay,
asked.
this I initially thought it was just going to be like a half an hour interview of some kind, but we did manage to pull a couple of hours out of it. So and for the viewers as well, I mean, like, these are early days in the podcast, in the Anup Zombie podcast, but we are hoping that you can soon start sending your questions in, and we'll make it more interactive for you as well. And hopefully John will come. You can drop in some questions, and John can come back again, and
Definitely.
we can see if we can sort of drill down into the little issues that you are facing as well.
Yeah, yeah.
Some things that we may not have covered at all. And everybody on LinkedIn, X, and YouTube, thank you for watching as well. And John, again, it was a pleasure to speak to you, man. It was good fun talking about like
Yeah, same
everything,
here.
your general
Yeah,
concepts. So
pleasure's all mine.
it'll be great to see you on the show back again. So that's it for episode number 10. Thank you all for joining in. Yeah. Good night, guys.
Bye.
Bye.